Welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Matt Bear. I'm the founder of Q4Launch and excited to dive into what we learned at RezFest and what you need to know. I'm actually coming to you today live from the Historic Hotels of America conference. I'm actually here at the Homestead Resort in Virginia for their conference. Excited to be here with this fine group of hotels, speaking for them this afternoon on a similar subject, kind of different, but a similar subject on how to build a strategy to combat the OTAs and not lose business to the OTAs. So excited for that session. I'll teach you a little bit later on. That also means I'm coming to you on hotel internet. So my apologies for that and any issues we may have related to the hotel internet. But hopefully things run smoothly. I am getting a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure where that's coming from, if anybody does have audio on your side, you shouldn't with the GoToWebinar, but if anybody does have audio on, if you can mute that, that'd be awesome. But yeah, so we'll dive into our topic here together. Again, with that little disclaimer, I am on hotel internet, so if we have any slowdowns or we have any audio issues along the way, I do apologize. I wanted to connect with you all today on this topic. So still see we've got a lot of people coming in the meeting. Welcome to you as well. As I just covered, my name is Matt. I'm the founder of Q4Launch and excited you guys are here with us. I've had the opportunity to speak at RezFest about 2 weeks ago now. It's crazy how fast the time has gone, and was excited to be there speaking with them. RezFest is, for those of you who don't know, I know there's some of our friends from the hotel industry that are joining us on today's webinar. RezFest is HomeAway's conference. HomeAway, of course, being owned by Expedia now, and lots of change in the marketplace happening there. So I know a lot of our hotel partners and Airbnbs are on today's webinar as well as a lot of our vacation rental friends. So glad you guys are all along for the ride so we can share some insights of what we learned at this conference. And if you ever have a chance to get to the Homestead, where I'm coming to you live from today, I encourage you to do that. Do a little plug for them. Beautiful historic property, just celebrated their 250th anniversary here, I think last year they said. So absolutely incredible historic property and beautiful place. I do not recommend, however, going for the 5-mile run that is behind the hotel. It is basically straight up a mountain and then straight back down the other side. I tried that yesterday, and I'll tell you I'm a little sore today. Wish I hadn't done that, but at the top was probably worth it. It was an absolutely stunning view. So awesome. Well, with that, let's dive into our content together today and get things rocking and rolling here. If you have any questions, you can use the chat panel for those, and we'll get to those questions throughout our time together as well. So, all right. One of the big takeaways, and I've talked about this a lot, so this isn't necessarily something new, but it's something that's being talked a lot about in our industry. And I thought HomeAway did a really good job connecting with some data on this, a little bit of data we talked about here on this slide. And honestly, they do a great job of setting up points that they want to make and a great job presenting that information. I was really impressed with a lot of the speakers at the conference and the way they packaged that information together. But one of the big points they spent a lot of time on early in the conference was this idea that the pace of change is accelerating faster than ever. And it's so true, and it's such a big deal, and something that we have to adapt to as business owners, and something that we have to be looking at constantly and saying, what role does I need to be thinking about in my business? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. But they cited a lot of things, only a little bit of which I pulled in from for information for you, but just looking at how fast things are accelerating. So to put that in perspective, electricity took 30 years to reach 10% household adoption. Phones, then years later, took 25 years to reach 10% household adoption. Compare that to kind of the modern age. Tablets reached 10% adoption in only 5 years, and smartphones reached 40% household adoption in only 10 years. So the kind of the takeaway there, and they cited a lot of other examples, but that things are accelerating faster than they ever have as a culture, as an industry, and we're seeing that more than ever, I think, within our industry. I was just on a trip seeing a few of our customers and was connecting with one of our customers in the St. George Island area and had a great conversation. And I was sitting there with Miss Alice and talking about the industry, and she's been in the industry for 40 years, absolute fixture, incredible woman who's built an incredible business there. But we were talking about the fact that in the last 2 years, our industry has seen more change than in the previous 40 years combined. And that's just within our industry. But we know that's happening everywhere. It's happening in every industry. And a lot of people are predicting with AI and machine learning and those things that a lot of jobs in the next 5 to 10 years are going to be eliminated. I mean, Amazon is working to eliminate a lot of jobs with automation and the store of the future with Amazon Go, and so many things that they're doing with delivering things via drone. And so many leading companies are pushing this envelope. And we have to think about that fact. And we have to think about we're living in a world that's changing faster than it's ever changed. And it's going to continue to change faster and faster and faster. It accelerates exponentially every day that goes by. So as we think about that and look at that, we want to understand, well, what does that mean for us? What does that mean for my business? What is my takeaway from that? And that's one of the things we wanted to connect with you guys on and show you kind of what we think that looks like. Some things you need to be thinking about, what this means for you. And this gets a little bit outside of just really looking at the technology piece. But I love this quote from Jeff Bezos from Amazon. This was in the letter he wrote to his shareholders this year. He writes an annual letter to his shareholders. And I love to listen to the way Bezos thinks about things, and I think there's a lot we can learn from that. But this quote, the senior team at Amazon is determined to keep our decision-making velocity high. Speed matters in business. Plus, a high-velocity decision-making environment is more fun, too. And that's one snippet out of the entire letter, so I encourage you to definitely read that entire letter. But what I think that means for you is that you have to adapt to this high-velocity decision-making environment. And it's probably a little bit painful at first, and I know a lot of us are resistant to change, but the only constant is change, and we have to be willing to adapt. There's a lot of other studies that show people, the most successful people are the people that make the fastest decisions. And it's not necessarily that the fast decision is what makes success, but it's that nature of making a quick decision and taking quick action off of that. That drives that success for you. So as you're thinking about your business and you're working in that direction in your business, you need to be really connecting with that. I got a message that there's no sound. Are other people hearing sound okay? Can somebody put in the chat panel for me if you're getting sound? So I know if we're good. Awesome. Getting some comments. Sounds good. Awesome. So it looks like that's maybe just one person who's having some sound issues there. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate that. So you really got to adapt to that high velocity decision-making environment. And I love the fact that he slid into it. It's more fun, right? I mean, and we all want that. We all want to be in a fun workplace. But those of us that are going to succeed in the future are the people that we believe are the people who will adapt to this fast-paced decision-making and implementing that into your business. So to kind of bring that back, I wanted to take that moment to kind of talk about some business strategy. But to bring that back a little more specifically, what does it mean for you? HomeAway is going to continue to drive change, and you might not love all the changes. I should have probably not even put you might not. You won't love all the changes. We see this happening. They're rolling so much out across their entire company since the Expedia acquisition. Change is happening, and it's going to continue to happen. One of the things, and this isn't on another slide, but one of the other takeaways I had from the conference was how much they're investing in their future just based on the staff that was there this year that wasn't there last year. Senior positions they didn't have last year on the team that are now positions, which shows you that they're continuing to make investments to drive that pace of change in their company. So it's a big deal. And as I talked a little bit about in that story about my time with Dallas down in the Florida area, our industry has seen more change in the last 2 years than the previous 40 years combined. So you have to think about that in your business. Have you made that kind of change in your business? Because customers and consumers are exposed to this high velocity market every day. And if your business is not adapting to keep pace, you're going to get left behind. You're going to become irrelevant. And the companies in your marketplace that you're competing with that are acting that way, that are adapting to that pace of change, are going to pass you by. So you may be a leader in your marketplace, and that's an awesome place to be, but don't allow that to get you to a place where you're not keeping up with that pace of change. And as you're choosing partners and you're thinking about that, you need to be aligning yourself with people that are pushing that change to keep yourself on the forefront of that. I think it's really easy to get kind of settle into the rhythm of your business and get left behind when technology passes you by. So it's not going to slow down. You won't like the changes that are coming necessarily. Hopefully you'll like some of them, and we like some of them, but we don't like all of them. But you have to adapt to them, and you have to figure out how to do business in that new environment. And the companies that figure out how to do business well in that new environment are the companies that are going to succeed. Second takeaway, they're launching a new ranking algorithm. So best match kind of came and went pretty quickly. There's actually a lot of the new ranking algorithm that's similar to best match, but they're using more and more machine learning and AI within their algorithm to drive where properties are showing up within their platform. And that's a big deal because it means the whole world of where am I ranking, and this, Best Match kind of did away with the listing subscriptions about a year ago. I think that was when that announcement came out, that they weren't really doing that anymore, the listing levels. Used to be you could kind of buy your placement. Now it's very algorithm driven, a lot like search engine optimization. But they've built that algorithm to really serve two criteria: the likelihood a traveler is to book and the quality of experience the traveler will receive. And I know that probably frustrates many of you from the perspective of, well, I want my property to be at the top and I want to buy my placement. But what they're really doing is taking a page out of Google's book here and saying everyone else is ranking things based on the best experience for the customer, what the customer wants. And that's really what HomeAway is rolling out here is SEO for their properties, search engine optimization for their properties to figure out how to get your property to rank. Now, the criteria, of course, are very different than the criteria Google uses in their algorithm, but that's kind of the mindset. Like, you can kind of think about it in that capacity. They want what's best for them, and they want what's best for the customer. And usually what's best for the customer is also what's best for them because that's the financial incentive piece of it, right? They've kind of built their business around that financial incentive. But you've got to think about that. It's not necessarily what's best for you. That's probably the last thing they're thinking about. What's best for Expedia and their shareholders, right? And then what's best for the customer, because what's best for the customer will drive what's best for Expedia through revenue and through shareholder price. So that's a big deal, and understanding those things. They kind of broke that down into some clear criteria. Of course, traveler feedback via reviews is a big part of that, the reviews your property is getting. So making sure that that's happening. Your accept, decline, and cancel rate. What does that look like? Because that's a big part of guest experience. Nobody likes when their reservation request gets declined, and nobody definitely likes when their reservation gets canceled. So they're tracking that, and it's going to be a big part of that. If you have a lot of cancellations or you have a lot of declines, you will absolutely see your ranking start to drop. On the flip side, if you have a lot of accepts, you accept most of your reservations, you'll probably see your ranking go up. Which means you have to be very committed to that calendar, keeping that up to date, which most of you are doing through software. I know it kind of was a thing in the past. You'd get an inquiry on one property and you could actually book that wherever. And they're working hard to make that harder and harder to run. They're working hard for all those bookings to happen on their platform because that's how they're monetizing the investments that they made when they bought HomeAway and its family of sites. Quality of photos, a big deal, making sure that you have great quality of photos. And a lot of people appreciated the news that they're increasing the photo limit on your listing. So that's great news as well. Property amenities, property location, definitely a big part of what's best for the traveler and what is most likely for them to book. But studying what travelers have booked in the past, they're able to then serve up properties that look like what they might book in the future. So if they've, if they've booked a lot of 2-bedroom places in the past on their platform, they're going to serve up mostly 2-bedroom places to them. Obviously once they put their guest count in, that will adjust what they see, but that's a big part of it. And understanding what is right for that customer. So serving unique search results to that customer and what they're looking for, more than just based off of number of guests and the dates that they're searching for, which used to be the kind of what they did. They're trying to match people to properties that are similar to what they've booked in the past, which that's totally outside of your control because you have no idea what they've booked in the past. And you can't make your property match what they've booked in the past, but you've got to make sure your property is represented well as is kind of laid out in these criteria. And then competitive rates. Airbnb has taken a lot of flack for their pricing algorithm and their price recommendations within their platform. But I was actually at a conference and heard somebody speaking on the topic, and they made a great point. And their point was Airbnb doesn't care how much you get for your property. They just want your property to book. Airbnb only gets paid when your property books. So for them, whether it books at $100 a night or $150 a night does not matter because they get their service fee either way. And yes, if it books for a higher rate, their service fee is a little bit more, but they're more focused on getting the booking and maximizing how much, to the penny they get out of it. They really are in that acquisition mode where they're trying to get people to book on their platform. And the same is going to be true of HomeAway. I think HomeAway is probably got a better system for pricing, and we're going to talk about that. But the same is definitely true from a rate perspective. They're going to serve up the properties that have the most competitive rates, because the most competitive rates are the most likely to get booked. Now, that doesn't mean that necessarily the cheapest rates, so don't hear that. That doesn't mean you need to lower your rates to get ranked or lower your rates to get booked. It means the most competitive. So if you have, oceanfront homes that book at $2,500 a night, you can have a competitive rate in the $2,500 a night segment for an oceanfront home. That doesn't mean you've got to, mark it down to $1,500 to have success. But it means you need to be thinking about competitive rates, and the days of being able to ignore your competitors' rates are over, and just to make up whatever rates you want. Those days are definitely over, and there's going to be more price pressure going forward because they're creating a more level playing field is not the right word. That's not the word that I'm looking for, but a more transparent playing field where it's easier for customers to see a lot of information very quickly, a lot of properties very quickly. So there will be rate pressure. There's no way you can make the changes they're making and it not create rate pressure, which is frustrating and not necessarily something that is super exciting, but definitely something we got to look at. And we have to look at how do we, while at the same time they've stripped contact information away and branding away, how do we add value? How do we differentiate our property? How do we position the brand of that property as its own unit, since we can't necessarily show our brand on the platform? How do we showcase our property in a way that it will stand out in that platform and justify the premium rate? If you're in the marketplace of charging premium rates and you want to be above your competition, you have to find a way to clearly communicate that value within the platform. So that's a big deal. You can't rely on your website necessarily to communicate that value. It should be there, has to be there, but you can't make the assumption that these people will see your site because you can't get them back to it necessarily. So that's an important part of it. You've really got to hone in on how to build a competitive rate and a competitive product to compete in this marketplace. I mean, one of the things they talked about, they had a whole session on their marketplace and really set that up. And talked about this, I think they used the old Roman marketplace where it was kind of the flea market of the day where people would go in and they'd set up their tables and they'd, all the vendors would be there. And it was this very competitive environment, which made price a big deal. And it forced people to be very competitive from a rate perspective. And that's what they're doing. They're building this marketplace. You get to put your goods, your services, your properties out there in their marketplace. But the consumer ultimately gets to see all that and make a decision on what they're going to book. So it's a very different way of thinking about things. And it's a very different style of HomeAway and VRBO than we've seen in the past. And I think there's a lot we can learn from what's going on across industries. The hotel space, the vacational space, there's a lot that can be learned from what they're doing. And there's a lot that can be learned and applied within our own marketplaces. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. So what does this mean for you? This has actually been out there for a while. It was kind of one of the first times they really talked about it. But you can track this in ranking metrics inside of your HomeAway VRBO account. So it's back in the back of the site. So the great part about this is it used to be nobody really understood what best match meant and what that data was. Now it's very transparent. It will show you exactly how you're performing on all these metrics in the ranking metrics part of your account. You need to keep track and optimize your listings. So you need to keep track of the data and ranking metrics and make sure you're optimizing for those things. And you kind of have to think about it like SEO or search engine optimization for your listings. Not that the strategies that work for SEO are going to work here. Not at all what I'm saying. I'm just trying to make that connection between the way you think about things and that you're optimizing your listings for rankings. Win-loss cards are coming as well, which is cool, and I can't spend a ton of time on it. But they're going to show you bookings that you won compared to competitive properties and bookings that you lost compared to competitive properties and help you see where you're winning and losing and how your property compares based on the criteria that the customer made their decision on. So there's actually going to be some more information coming out. We're going to publish a more in-depth blog just on their new ranking algorithm probably in the next week or so. So keep an eye on our blog, q4launch.com/blog. And you'll see that update come out. You can also subscribe to the blog, and then you'll get notifications every time we post a new one. So that would be helpful if you come back and check it all the time. But check that out. There will be a more in-depth, a deeper dive on that specific topic and what the new ranking algorithm looks like and the criteria and how to leverage some of that. So definitely encourage you to check that out. Market maker. You've heard me talk about pricing, and this was the biggest announcement that came out of the conference. But Market Maker is HomeAway's new revenue management tool, and they spent a lot of time setting us up at the conference, and I thought did a great job from a product rollout perspective. There was a lot of excitement around this new tool, new feature coming out from them. There's still, of course, a lot of unknowns. It's a brand new tool. It's in beta phase right now. It is out there. You can start using it. You may have to contact your rep to get it turned on your account. I'm not quite sure how that's working yet, but we have started seeing it pop into some of the accounts. And this data is straight from HomeAway. So you see that comment there. It was sourced from HomeAway's press release, which was just distributed on September 25th. But really cool tool, and all this is their content again. But by analyzing billions of data points, Market Maker provides a holistic view of major factors that affect a property's potential and puts data into the hands of property managers so they can make their own informed business decisions. The benefit of the tool allows users to set revenue and occupancy strategies at the property level, identify opportunities for higher revenue and occupancy, and they'll actually give you, a revenue potential in there. Easily identify and track competition in the same market. This is a really neat thing. This part of the tool, being able to build a competitive set for an individual property, something that's never really been able to be done, and be able to track that competitive set from a pricing perspective. They will automatically build a competitive set for you based off your criteria, your room count, those types of things, your amenities, but you could also add and delete properties from your competitive set. So that's a really neat tool to make researching your competitive rates and making sure you're staying competitive much faster process than it's ever been. And saving time by viewing data and opportunities for many properties in a single dashboard. So really thinking about the property manager. I know they've gotten some flack in the last 6 months to a year or maybe forever about the fact that they don't really care about property managers, and they're really building things to help the individual homeowner succeed. And I can see why people say that. I understand that. But that piece of it, that being able to view multiple properties at a time, obviously built for the professional property manager, and a great thing to make it much faster. I will also integrate with local event and holiday information that could affect demand in a specific area. So lots of great things happening within this new tool, something that we believe will really revolutionize the way people are doing revenue management in the vacation rental industry. It is a really hard thing to do revenue management well in the vacation rental industry. The hotel industry has been doing it well for years and years and years, but the way that's set up is much different. When you think about a hotel, they have a lot of the same units. They've got 100 double queen bedrooms, they've got 100 king rooms, and then they've got a handful of, their high-end suites. So it's simpler because they have maybe 6 unit types that they're managing. But with your properties, every property is unique. The amenities are unique, the quality is unique. So you're trying to manage rate effectively for all these unique products, and it's a big job. And a hotel usually has a full-time person doing revenue management, and they only have 6 units that they have to deal with. You've got a lot more unique units from a pricing perspective. So a lot going into that. But I think this tool will revolutionize the way the vacation rental industry does revenue management. And I think there's a lot that the hotel industry could learn from an insight perspective using this tool as well. So maybe you're a hotel, maybe you're an inn, a B&B, and you have it listed on HomeAway, but just having access to Market Maker and the data that's inside of there could be worth just creating your account. And again, I can't speak to how it's all going to work. I can't speak to if they're going to charge for this tool. Everything I've seen right now, they're not charging for it, but they may in the future. I'm not sure. But it could be that they just give it away to be more competitive against Airbnb as well. So can't speak to that part of it, the pricing piece. But if I was a Airbnb owner, hotelier, even though I don't list on HomeAway or VRBO, I would want access to the data that's inside of here. They also spoke to this at RezFest last year. They mentioned it again this year, but still have plans, at least from what I heard, they still have plans to integrate air data into this. And when I say air data, I'm talking about airline data, demand for airline, because typically as we study how consumers book travel, the air purchase is the first purchase. So if we have insight on what's going on from an air purchase perspective, which Expedia has, because they sell a lot of flights on Expedia.com, so they have all that data. They also have transparency into the rates that the airlines are charging, even if they're not booking that flight. But if we can tap into that data and understand when are the airlines raising price and when are they lowering price, we'll have advanced notice of what demand looks like for future dates. That's one of the challenges of revenue management, is it's very historical driven in most cases. But if we can get access into air data, we can predict demand before it gets to our part of the travel booking process. That air purchase comes first, which if you're in a market that gets a lot of air travel, that's a big deal. If you're in a market that doesn't get a lot of air travel, maybe not as big of a deal. But a really important piece of data that I think, at least from what they said, will eventually live inside of, I believe will live inside of Market Maker, but something they're planning to make available from Expedia. So here's a few screenshots of what that's going to look like. This top screenshot is the rate forecast and how you're able to forecast rates. It shows, increases in supply and demand basically that relate to the rate. And you're able to choose a strategy based on how aggressively you want to price things. I know that's a really small screenshot, hard to really get much detail there. And then there's also the competition map and what that looks like. So you can build your competitive set within that. So that's cool. Great information about that. You can build your own competitive set. You can add a competitor. And this is kind of pulling in 56 similar 3-bedroom, 3-bath, New Orlando units. You could also add, vacation rentals can add hotels within their competitive set. So if a hotel exists, they can pull that data in. So that's really an interesting part of it. Really cool tool that's built in here as well. So lots going on. I'll zoom in real quick on this rates forecast piece here. You guys can get a look at that if you haven't seen that information. But definitely a cool part of the overall strategy. So the chosen strategy, your current rate, and kind of that gap between looking at being able to make that revenue. So what does this mean for you? No matter what part of the market you're in, your market is about to get more competitive. When I say your market, your city, your destination is about to get more competitive and dynamic. Whereas maybe prices haven't been super dynamic in the past, they are going to get more dynamic. Price is going to get squeezed a little bit, I think. Now, for a lot of us, our hope is we can, of course, use that data to drive price up. But honestly, I think it's going to create some compression in price just because there's more data available. It's the best revenue management tool we've seen. There are some revenue management tools out there, but this is by and far the best I think I've seen. And it's a big opportunity for those who adopt it. Huge opportunity for those who adopt it. And I think we're going to see a dramatic increase in the number of revenue managers that larger VR companies are hiring. And if you are a larger VR, I would recommend hiring a revenue manager. It's a big job. It's a big job that I would have said pre this tool was almost impossible. Almost impossible to do it really well. But I think this tool is a big enough deal. It will transform the way people are doing revenue management within the industry. And it's, in my opinion, one of HomeAway's first big wins in their battle against Airbnb. They have been playing catch up with Airbnb for a long time, really the last 2 years. And a lot of things they've rolled out were just duplicates of what Airbnb has done from a strategy perspective. This tool, to me, is their first big win in that battle against Airbnb. Now, they've got a massive amount of traffic. They've got brand legacy. They've got all those things. Those are all wins for them as well. But this is their first big win that's recent in this space, and a big opportunity for those of you that really hone in and start building it into your business practices to drive more revenue. So one of the big things, I've talked a little bit about the marketplace. HomeAway is investing big in their marketplace. And I put an emphasis on big again because it's a big deal. This is absolutely the future that HomeAway sees for themselves. It is absolutely why Expedia bought it. No question about it. They bought it to turn it into a marketplace. We have talked to you guys about that since they made the purchase. That in our first webinar, when we talked about it, the announcement came out, we led a webinar like the next week and talked about why do they do it? What does it mean? What's the future look like? And so far, that webinar has done a great job of predicting the future pretty spot on for the changes they're going to make. We predict the redaction of the contact information back then. So these are things we've been predicting and helping our customers prepare for since then. So there's not a lot of, the good news is for us, there haven't been a lot of surprises. I know it's caught a lot of other people in the industry off guard, but they're investing big in their marketplace, and it's absolutely the future of the company, and it's where everything is going. Everything is going to be wrapped around getting people to book on their marketplace. And that's a big thing. You've got to really think about that. And we've used this analogy before as well, but Expedia bought HomeAway to convert a directory site, a site like Craigslist, into a marketplace, a site like Amazon. So think about that. Think about the competitive positioning of Craigslist versus Amazon. That's what they're trying to do. They bought something they believed was tremendously undervalued, and they paid a lot for it at the time. On that webinar, if you guys were, anybody who's with us today was there, I told you to buy Expedia stock. I don't know if I can say that in a recorded webinar and not get in trouble with the SEC. But I said go buy Expedia stock, and if you look at what's happened with their stock over the last 2 years, you'll know I was right in predicting that future as well. But it's a big deal. They made a great investment, and they are monetizing that investment in a big way, and we've talked to you about some of those things after their earnings calls in the past. But they drove home that fact that the marketplace is their future. It is the future of the industry, and it's what consumers are looking for. And it's happening throughout their family of 100-plus websites. This isn't something unique to HomeAway or to VRBO. They're rolling this out in a big way. And honestly, they're doing this faster than I thought they would. I thought they probably would ignore some of their smaller sites, but they're doing this in a big way across their platform, and it's disrupting a lot of people. So just last week, they announced they were going to all the same things that the vacation rental industry is upset about. They're doing in the hotel and B&B space with some of their other sites there, like bedandbreakfast.com. And I know we have a lot of B&B people on the call today. And we're going to have some positioning from us come out on that. So stay tuned for that as well to help you guys understand what you need to do about that. Getting lots of questions from our customers in that space about what to do with their listings. But they're taking away subscriptions at all. As far as we know, the information we have so far is they're eliminating subscriptions at all in that, and they're only going to a pay-per-booking model. That is happening, I think, in the B&B space faster than the VR space because that has already been done by other people in that space. I think that will eventually happen in the vacation rental space. I believe they will do away with the subscription fee in 2018. And I think everything will move to pay-per-booking. I'm not saying it will be at the same rate it is in the hotel, bed and breakfast in space. In that space, it's really about, on average, about a 20% commission that they charge. I know in the VR space, many of us can't even think about paying a 20% commission for a booking. But I do believe that they will roll that out. I think in 2018, they make small changes, so it's not all at once to freak people out, although I think they freak people out anyways. But I think they will roll out those small incremental changes. And I think one of them we're going to see in 2018 is that they eliminate the subscription and that they move to a pay-per-booking model, and that they will get 6% of the service fee on the guest, 6% from the guest, and they'll get a percentage from us as well. And they're going to make money on both sides of that transaction because they can. They own the marketplace. They get to make the rules. They own the customer. They get to make the rules. And that's a big deal. And they're going to continue to push to make your brand irrelevant pre-booking. And and this is one of the other big changes. I haven't seen at least much of them yet with this, but I think this is one of the other things they're going to get very sophisticated with in 2018 based on some things I heard at the conference. Wasn't really announced, wasn't really talked about, but just the reading between the lines of what people were saying and some of the hires they've made. I expect their post-booking guest marketing to get more sophisticated. For a marketplace like HomeAway. Now, you need to start thinking about what Amazon is doing and looking at HomeAway and saying, okay, what would HomeAway look like if Jeff Bezos was running it? What would HomeAway look like if it was Amazon? And start thinking about some of the things that Amazon has done in the last 2 to 5 years and thinking about what those types of strategies would look like at HomeAway. When you start thinking like that, you start thinking in a way that helps you predict the future. That's kind of how we look at it when we're putting our content together to help figure out where things are going. But I think one of the big changes we're going to see in 2018, other than the one I just mentioned, is post-booking guest marketing. Because the success of a platform in a marketplace environment is heavily based on the ability for a customer to come back and buy again. A customer will make a purchase once, but will they come back and make a purchase again? And for a site like HomeAway, for a marketplace, whether it's Amazon, Airbnb, Expedia, HomeAway, whatever, one of the big measures of success is, does the customer come back and purchase again? And if you get to yes, if you get an answer of yes on that, then it becomes how often? How often do they come back and purchase again? And I think you're going to see a big investment. You're seeing a big investment in pre-booking marketing to drive traffic and bookings via the platform. But I think they're going to circle that up and they're going to start marketing to a guest post-booking much more aggressively and much more sophisticated because they have a massive amount of data on that guest. They can do that very intelligently. and trying to keep from losing that customer. So that customer ends up staying at your property, and you have an opportunity at that time and before that time to market to them. But this is so important. If they're going to get more sophisticated with post-booking marketing, you have to get more sophisticated with post-booking marketing or post-stay marketing. Those are two different things. Post-booking could be pre-stay. Post-stay, obviously, is post-stay. But post-stay becomes pre-booking again if you're doing marketing well. If you follow that, the dreaming, planning, booking, experiencing, remembering life cycle that we've talked about. The big thing, and we've talked about this as well, HomeAway wants to own the customer relationship, pre and post-booking. And they're going to invest big dollars into marketing pre and post-booking to own that customer. They will continue to get more and more sophisticated and more aggressive in this pursuit. And you have to decide what role you want HomeAway's marketplace playing in your business. That's a big deal. You have to understand what role you want them to play. And you have to then build a strategy off of that. You also need to think about your website differently. Your website is your marketplace. And when you see the amount of money HomeAway is investing in their marketplace, not suggesting you should try to invest that money into your marketplace, but when you see the amount of time, energy, expertise, money they are investing in their marketplace, you need to be thinking about that as well. You need to be investing into your website in a way, and I don't mean spending big dollars. You can do this without doing that, but investing into it from a time perspective and putting it in its proper place in your organization to say, it's a priority. My website needs to be a priority, not something that I launched 3 years ago and I'm not paying attention to anymore, not something that I tweak once a year, but something that is constantly going through iterations and improvements. Look at Amazon. It is constantly being worked on and improved upon. Look at HomeAway. It's clearly constantly being worked on and improved upon, being studied, being tested. And you need to think about your website in that way as well. You don't have to do it as aggressively, of course. You can't afford to do it as aggressively, but you need to probably do it more aggressively than you are right now. And you need to get set up on a platform that is positioning you in that way, a website platform that's thinking about the future and setting you up for that today. Because if you're not thinking about the future, you're going to get left behind. If you don't have a website that can adapt to change fast, you're going to get left behind. And you really need to be building those strategies into what you're doing and really thinking about your website more like a marketplace, thinking about your website more like a software application that's constantly evolving and getting better, as opposed to a project that you did once, you launched it, and now you're done. It's a total shift in the way you think about your website, but those of us that make that shift are the ones that are going to succeed in the future. And knowing all of this, you need to prepare a marketing strategy and a customer retention strategy. As we're headed into the fourth quarter, like we are 3 days, I think, away from the fourth quarter of this year, which is crazy. But the most important thing you can do with the rest of your year is plan your marketing and customer retention strategy for 2018. I know a lot of you were in the process of this because we've seen our phone ringing off the hook for the last couple of weeks. It actually usually starts in October. It started a little earlier this year. So I applaud those of you who are getting ahead of the game. And I know we're having a lot of conversations about these things. But you need to be preparing your marketing strategy and customer retention strategy right now to succeed in 2018. Now, don't wait to implement it in 2018. Like if you can build it and get it ready to go and make some changes, that's great. Implement it as soon as you can, because the sooner you start implementing it, the sooner you're going to start seeing results. But building that strategy is really, really important. You cannot afford to ignore that anymore. If you decide to ignore that, you really have to just make that decision to say, okay, I'm okay with all of my business coming from a third-party marketplace, be it Expedia, be it HomeAway, be it whatever marketplace you're a part of. But that's the decision. Like, what role do I want marketplaces, third-party distribution sites, OTAs, call them whatever you want to call them, all the same thing. What role do I want to play in my strategy, and how am I going to build a strategy to get more aggressive? If you, knowing HomeAway is getting more aggressive and investing into their marketing and their marketplace, if you don't get more aggressive, you're going to lose market share. A lot of you have already lost market share because HomeAway and Airbnb are going head to head so much that they're commanding a lot of market share. So there's a lot of challenges in that, but you have to get more aggressive. You have to be willing to do things you've never done if you want to get results you've never got before, or even if you just want to keep the results you have because everybody else is getting more aggressive. So you've got to be willing to up your game. And we want to help you guys with that. So it leads to that question of what are you going to do about it? You know, okay, now I know, what am I going to do about it? And we want to help you take some next steps. So we're doing a free marketing consultation with members of our team to just help you figure out what those next steps look like. Just help have a conversation. Honestly, sometimes just sitting down with somebody and having a 30-minute conversation about what should this look like in my business? What am I doing well? Where do I need to improve? And what does a strategy for 2018 look like? What should you be thinking about for 2018? We'll tell you what's working for our customers. Like we'll, open up our playbook and say, hey, and we do this every time we lead a webinar. We open up our playbook for you guys and say, this is what's working. This is what we're seeing work, and we'll talk to you about how to effectively market pre and post stay, because that's really, really important. So if you want to take advantage of that free consultation, I'm going to open up the poll here right now so that you can ask for that. So you should be seeing that on your screen. Just ask the question, would you like a free marketing consultation? Yes, please get in touch. If you check that box, we'll get in touch with you and schedule some time to do that. If you say no, thank you, that's awesome. It just helps us know, one, that you're still awake and that I haven't put everybody to sleep. That's a metric of success that I look at, is how many people did I keep awake on the webinar. Speaking to an empty hotel room is challenging to do, so it helps me know people are engaged. But it also helps us know who wants to be followed up with. We don't want to follow up with anybody that doesn't want to be followed up with. But we do like to get 70% of people voted to be able to move on past that poll. The next thing we're going to do is get to some Q&A. So if you have questions, now would be a great time to drop those in the questions area of the site, and we will definitely get to those questions here in just a minute. Lots of content in today's webinar, and I'll move pretty quick through it. But if we just get a few more people voted, and then it'll let me move past and close that poll. That would be awesome. I guess everybody else stepped away to get more coffee. But we will go ahead and move into our Q&A time here and get those questions answered for you guys. All right. Let's see. All right, here we go. All right, lots of, I can hear you fine. Thank you guys for all that. Appreciate that. A question here from Kathleen. Will HomeAway be requiring a certain rate to be listed? My understanding is that they won't necessarily require you to list a certain rate. They'll require you to list a rate, but they don't want to control what rates you want to list. They don't want to control what your rates are. They want to help you figure out what your rates should be, and creating some space within that. So that's, I think, what that's going to look like. It's not necessarily that they're going to make you have a certain rate or that they're going to control your rates or anything like that. So don't be concerned about that. But that they will help you select what those rates are. So I think that's kind of what we're looking at, than that they're going to control a certain rate. So next question here. Hey Matt, on the rates question, maybe I missed it, but are they considering add-on fees like cleaning and pets as part of the competitive rates calculation, or just the ADR? That is, are companies like us that feature an all-inclusive rate on VRBO going to be at price competition disadvantage compared to companies that add fees? That's a great question. And honestly, I don't have the answer to that. But however, they're serving up your rate in the search results. So the way you find the answer to that is specific for you, because it depends on how you have your rates all set up within your property management software that feeds into to HomeAway and VRBO. But if you do a search and you find your own property, if you look at the way your rates are showing, that's the rate that they're looking at. Like Airbnb rolls that in and creates a total rate, but it depends on how you have your rates set up within your property management software, how that all gets packaged together. But the way to look at that is if you use Market Maker, you can go in there and see the rate, your rate compared to your competitor's rate, and you can see that side by side. And then of course you'll know what all is packaged into your rate, whether it includes those things you asked about or not. You may or may not know what's all included in your competitor's rate, but you can at least see how they're positioning your rate, and if you need to make any changes in the way that you're positioning your rates, because that may be a takeaway. It may be that we need to make some changes in how we're positioning our rate. The hotel industry does a lot with rate positioning and changing rates just based off what's included and what's not. And there's a lot you can read and Google add-on fees in the hotel industry and see other ways that they're making money. One of our customers is in an urban market, a vacational customer. I was having a conversation with them, and just in a strategy meeting, just mentioned charging for parking. They weren't charging for parking. In an urban environment, it's kind of a norm, so they started charging for parking. And now on a busy night, they're making thousands of dollars in parking fees. Never charged for parking before. They're making thousands of dollars a night now on parking fees, and it's pure profit for them. Not saying you should go do that, but it's a strategy that looking at fees is an opportunity. Another question here: what do you consider a larger VR company? How many properties or locations? There's not honestly, I don't have like a number for that. I mean, it's really looking at your budget and being able to say, if I had a revenue manager, so that question I imagine is coming back from my comment on larger companies will most likely hire revenue managers. If I hire a revenue manager, how much do I think I could increase revenue by on my properties? Because there's so much that goes into that, right? I mean, it's ultimately how big of a company you are, what you can afford from a staff perspective, to be able to answer that question. If you've got large properties, if you have oceanfront properties, if you have ski in, ski out properties, those types of things, more expensive properties, that's different. You can have a lot less expensive properties and be in a really good place compared to a lot of really inexpensive properties. But what you've really got to look at to answer that question for yourself is, if I made this investment, how much do I think I would be able to increase revenue by for myself as the owner of the company or the manager of the company, and of course your owners and the value of that. And what would having a revenue management professional on your team do for your competitive positioning against other property managers in your market? That's an important consideration as well. Would it help me bring on more homes? But I will tell you, revenue managers are really expensive. It's a very expensive position to hire in the scheme of things. It's not an entry-level thing. It's an expensive position. Another question here. So smaller properties are going to be forced out of the picture. I'm not sure where that question is coming from, so if you want to ask it again and clarify a little bit. I don't think that they're going to be forced out of the picture. I don't see that happening. It's just, I think price is going to be squeezed a little bit because we're going to have more, the consumer is going to have more transparency. We're all going to have more transparency in the pricing. So I think price will get squeezed by this change. In certain markets, it could increase by this change, but usually as people get more aggressive with pricing gets squeezed a little bit. So I'm not 100% sure I'm answering your question, but I don't 100% follow it either, or what I said that led to that question. But you drop me an email or a phone call. I'll be happy to follow up with you on that specific question. Are they going to be the merchant of record, and when will they release deposit or guest payments to the vacation room manager? Right now, I don't believe they're going to be the merchant of record. At least that's what they've said. Of course, Airbnb is the merchant of record. Through their integration, because they also own software, right? With Escapia and V12, they want that. They've got some vested interest there and continuing to allow transactions to happen there. In some cases, they are the merchant of record. If you use their credit card processing automatically through vacation rent payment, then they are the merchant of record. I don't know. They've so far said they don't want to be the merchant of record, across the board enforcing that. But in some cases, you just don't know. When will they release the deposit? It varies. I think that already varies based on your relationship with them and how that's set up and everything else. And Airbnb, their policy varies as well. So that's going to be I think a customer by customer thing. I don't think they're going to make a sweeping change on that, at least right now. I think in the future there could be a day where they decide to be the merchant of record, like Airbnb has, because one of the important parts, as I talked about earlier, of a marketplace succeeding is getting your customers to come back and make a purchase with you. And the most important thing to them is their guest having a great experience. And Airbnb is really bad about this, but they side with the customer on almost every single situation. And they'll give the customer their money back at the drop of a hat. And they do that because they know the guest is the most important thing to them, more so than the property manager, the host, whatever you want to call it, the property being on their platform. At least that's what their behavior tells you. And to ultimately do that, and ultimately control the customer experience, they have to process payment. So I would not be surprised at all. I think eventually they will be the merchant of record, but I think it'll be a longer road to see that change. Question here: is RezFest worth attending if you don't use HomeAway software? In the past, it's been a much more software-focused conference. This time it was less software-focused. They actually opened up RezFest to other software companies this year, I believe, for the first time. So it's transitioning as a conference, and I would say yes is the answer to your question, in my opinion. I think even if you're not in the vacation rental industry, I think you can learn a ton at the conference. Of course, it's a vacational conference, but I think you can learn a ton. Is Market Maker available to RBOs? Yes, Market Maker will be available to RBOs. Thank you for doing this today. Talk soon. Absolutely, Matt. I've got you on my list to call, so I will follow up with you. Question here from David. David, good to see you. Been thinking about you guys a lot. Do you feel HomeAway will be collecting and submitting the sales and use tax on the owner's behalf like Airbnb does now? I don't know. I know you asked what I think, not what I know, but I think eventually they will. But not right now. Right now they're not. I think eventually they will. As part of their relationship they're trying to develop with in different markets. They're doing a lot. I really appreciate the investment HomeAway is making in government relations. They are really leading that effort in a way that Airbnb is not. And I think as part of that relationship and spearheading government relations, they very well may take on collecting and submitting sales and use tax on the owner's behalf. Now, keep in mind, if they do that, that means they're the merchant of record. They have to be the merchant of record if they're going to collect sales and use tax on the owner's behalf. So, double-edged sword there. Comment here, thanks for an interesting webinar. I'm unhappy with BetterReference.com changing to a non-subscription entity, so this explains more as to why they are shifting platforms. Absolutely, Kathleen, and there's going to be more information from us coming out on that, as I mentioned, so stay tuned to our blog, and we'll get you some more information about that. And we will most likely be leading a webinar about that specific thing as well, because it's affecting a lot of people. Do you think eliminating subscriptions will force RBOs to leave the sites? Honestly, I think RBOs are just as dependent, if not more dependent, on HomeAway and VRBO than property managers are. So no, I don't think RBOs can afford to leave the sites because they have no marketing plan. If you're an RBO and you have one property, two properties, whatever, you can't afford a website. You can't afford a marketing plan. Whereas if you're a property manager and you're representing 30 properties or 100 or 1,000, you can afford your website. You can afford a marketing plan. So you can start reducing your dependency on HomeAway and VRBO. And I think that's, of course, one of the takeaways. You need to be thinking about reducing dependency on the platform to drive long-term success for you. Question from Judy, how do we sign up for Market Maker? Honestly, I don't work for HomeAway, so I can't help you with that. I would contact your HomeAway rep and see. I know in some cases it just automatically come on in some people's accounts that I've talked to. Other people have actually signed up for it at RezFest. So get in touch with your rep if you have one at HomeAway and ask them that question. But I can't help you with that specific part, Judy. So that's it. I think we got to everybody's questions. If anybody has any last minute questions, please drop those in the chat panel. Happy to do that. If there's any other questions you didn't want to ask today or anything we can help you with, if you're trying to think about your 2018 strategy, please get in touch with us. My contact information is there on the screen. We want to help you guys. If you need website help, if you need marketing help, we're here to stand in that gap with you and help you build a strategy that is future-proof, that is forward-looking. And that's what we do all day, every day, and love getting the chance to do that with so many of you. So thank you for trusting us with your business. If you already do, if you don't, we would love to talk to you about what that might look like. And you can get in touch with me again with my contact information there on the screen. Thanks, everybody. We'll get a copy of today's webinar out via recording as well, so you can follow up with that.